Good afternoon and very warm welcome to all of you on our tech chat. Today's topic is scaling the Hybris-based solutions to meet unprecedented loads. The COVID situation, as you know, have been all across the globe, and it saw people changing their usual habits, right? Things has been changing quite a bit. We are not doing the things which we used to do, and we are trying to do things differently. There are different reasons for that. We all understand there's a fear of contracting the infection, or I think maybe many more. But the key thing is that people are behaving differently, and one of the key trend that we have seen here is actually turning towards online channels for essential shopping. Okay, and basically because of that, the loads actually increased on the grocery platforms. Moreover, that the uncertainty of the future actually also pushed people to getting into further panic buying mode. So not only the load increased, but also the sizes of the carts increased as well. And this actually also lead to multiple challenges. Okay, so because of this changes into the people's behavior, turning towards the online solutions, we saw a sudden surge of load on the sites, and we had to take a lot of different type of measures to ensure that the grocery platforms could meet those loads. Okay, interestingly, every single platform saw a very different situation, and at every single situation the response was unique. Every solution team actually faced different problems, responded to them in a very different manner. Okay, and all in this group, what I have done is I have invited some of our technology leaders who have been in the thick of the things in last couple of months to ensure that their grocery platforms are able to meet users' expectations, the loads that are being coming onto their sites, able to deliver the goods that they need in the right quantity, right quality, and on time. And what we want to do is to really talk to them and understand what situations they have seen, how did they responded, what are the lessons learned, what are the strategies they adopted to ensure that their solutions could meet all these extended demands. Without taking more time, let me introduce my guest today. So I go from my right, from my left, so Rishi Shehrawat. Rishi, can you wave to the people, please?
Hi.
Yeah, so Rishi is the director of technology in Sapient, and he takes care of one of the largest grocery implementation that we have done on Hybris. He is not only responsible for managing that platform, but also to evolve it for future needs. Of course, COVID actually pushed them to look at to adopt some of very interesting new strategies, which we would like to learn from Rishi in this discussion. Then I have Chetan, is also a director of technology, and he has been building and managing the Hybris platforms for various industries. One of them is definitely from, not exactly from grocery, but very close to grocery. That is the liquor shop. So he is actually managing a large application from one of the wine retail chain of United States. And of course, as the grocery sites saw a lot of extended loads, wine site also did. So Chetan will also be able to sharing us the insight into what happened over there and how they actually manage those loads. And last but not the least, I have Marc. He is director of engineering with Sapient, and he is based in London office. He is also managing and evolving a large platform for Paris headquartered global grocery retail chain. Welcome you all, and we will. So let's get started. Chairman, So, COVID situation arrived almost like 2.5, 3 months back at different countries at different point of time within a month. But the lockdown actually kind of started at the same time, within a week all over the globe. Uh, so, what happened at that time? Uh, what were actually what did you experience from the application perspective, whether when people actually started looking at the online platform as the go-to platform for their essential needs? Rishi, was there something which has been unique in their behavior uh, at that point of time?
Yes, so I think I work for a Canada-based grocery company. So what happened was, in Canada, I think on the 13th of March, they declared the schools were to be shut down because of the COVID situation. So immediately after that, we started seeing a huge surge in traffic. When I say huge surge in traffic, I mean, so the last peak that we had seen on the platform was around the whole Black Friday weekend, and we started seeing traffic. Right after that, within a few hours, within 2-3 hours of the announcement, we started seeing 2 to 3 times the traffic that we saw during the Black Friday week. And this was just the start, because and then we started to have, in the sense, because the problem, and then of course there was this whole panic thing that started happening on the stores and all that. So people wanted to go to the stores and all of that, so there was a lot of, you could see long queues outside stores and all that. And then that further accentuated the situation, because then, looking at the queues, they wanted to, come online. And, so this just kind of, made the whole situation in terms of traffic much worse, in terms of, we saw a significant spike. So I think within, and I think that's the time that we kind of went down, in the sense, because the surge was just a lot more than what we would normally expect. And then, we started kind of, dealing with it, to see how we could scale the platform to kind of, to be able to handle that. Yeah, but there was a significant spike, at least, like I said, 3 to 4 times of what we saw, immediately after the announcement was made, within a few hours.
So 4 times of the peak load.
Yeah, of the peak load was seen earlier. Yeah.
That's actually huge, because peak load by itself is actually really huge. But was it same for you as well, Marc, in Europe?
So, with our customer, what happened is that we had, on average, to give you an example, during a normal day, because it's a grocery retailer with limited non-food activities, so we don't do Black Friday like some other retailers could be doing. So we tend to have, I wouldn't say a flat traffic, but we have a traffic which is roughly, peak traffic was about 5,000 concurrent users on site, and we went to 20,000, so 4 times as well. But the funny story is that we saw it coming. So on Friday the 13th, we started to see increased traffic building, and we knew that the French president was talking at 8 p.m. on the Monday. So on Friday, people called me and to say, Marc, what would be, do we have a way to support, control this traffic that is supposed to come later on, 3 days later? So we touch on what we did for that, but we kind of expected over 4 or 5 days to see the traffic grow, and we saw it grow by 4 times.
4 times, again, almost the same thing. So we are seeing same trend. So now, of course, these two applications are pretty much grocery applications, and was kind of expected, because these are essential. Nobody can live without food. But coming to the next one, which is Chetan, your case is kind of more interesting, because it's more on the liquor side rather than the food side. But did you also see the similar trend over there, or the user spiked over a period of time for you?
No, I think Amit, we had a similar thing, though it is not a grocery application, but wine and liquor was declared as an essential commodity in few states in the US, and that is what made people actually start the panic buying. But the actual the increase in the number of products that we saw was for a different reason. Hand sanitizer are one of the main things that people wanted to buy, which was out of stock across most of the grocery stores. and there were viral videos across the US which showed how you can make hand sanitizer at home using vodka and other alcohols, and that is what started, we saw as a spike in buying for vodka in our client. And similar to what Rishi and Marc said, we actually saw, compared to last peak, which is normally Thanksgiving and Christmas for us, we saw at least 4 to 5 times the peak amount of traffic coming in. And though the order volumes were increased as well, the order products that were being ordered were different than what was normally bought during the peak. It was most around alcohol-based wines, alcohol-based vodkas and whiskeys, which then used to be people used to make hand sanitizers at home.
Very interesting, but interesting. But the key thing over here is that all these platforms actually saw user load spiking to the 4 times of their kind of peak loads, and that is actually huge. So I just want to understand, means like these applications saw those 4 times of load and they could actually sustain the load. So were the application actually tested for that kind of load, or it was just like or was something else there in the infrastructure which allowed you to actually scale for this load? Rishi?
Yeah, so I think we never tested for load like that. In the sense, this was something completely new to us in terms of what we'd seen earlier and what we tested for. I think what helped us significantly was the fact that we actually migrated all our applications from a DC to Google Cloud. And after the migration, we had also set up all our application tiers in a way that, we were using auto scaling and auto healing capabilities. In the sense, we were running VMs for our application tier, but we're using managed instance groups, which Google gives, to be able to auto scale and all of that. So luckily, because of this, we were able to kind of take this kind of a surge. We did hit some bottlenecks, on certain tiers like database. So, but generally, the whole application tier I could scale and I could scale, and this did not need any hand holding, in the sense I didn't have to go and physically provision servers. So I had all those configurations and auto scaling based on CPU, and these tiers automatically started scaling up to be able to handle the load.
So basically the cloud platform actually worked nicely for you, and auto scaling could work for you.
We could have handled this load on a data center. I wouldn't have been able to provision that kind of hardware and do the kind of things that I can do on cloud very quickly, which enables you to adapt to that. So I think cloud was the reason why we were able to to a large extent handle this.
Yeah, Marc, I think you guys are also on the cloud. So did the cloud play an important role in your infrastructure scaling here as well?
So it's a bit different here, because we had what I would call an hybrid architecture. So we were working with some legacy services, some headless products, and we knew we had a number of bottlenecks. But like Rishi, we never tested to that load, and our architecture, which is made to between 30 and 40 services, is pretty complex. So we tend to do one-to-one chain performance testing, but it's actually so complex that it's pretty impossible to do a full platform load testing end-to-end. So that was a real-life testing. And because we started to see the load progressively go up, we started to identify the bottleneck we already knew and monitor them. We started to make some decisions about removing some of the bottlenecks and to simplify the architecture. And we did also some resizing on the fly, because we had most of the architecture on the cloud, by adding instances, because we have part of the architecture is still VM based, and we also extended our caching mechanism. So, and I will touch that we did something else, but I'll probably touch on it later.
Yep. So that's kind of like very interesting. So it sounds like you were actually trying to scale the application at the real time. You are looking at the load, monitoring the load, and monitoring the application performance, and then reacting to it. Right.
Yep. Absolutely. And because we saw I think the lockdown happened on Thursday the 12th, but we knew that there were more strict measures coming. So we anticipated that the peak would be bigger the following week. And as I said, on the 16th, the French president at about 8 p.m. make a speech. And that was a moment where we peaked to the 4 times. So, and we saw our biggest bottleneck starting to be in pain. So we didn't go down, and we were quite proud because over the following weeks, competitors went down, and we never went down. But the fluidity of the experience of the site was not ideal. So we decided to control traffic and to actually allow people who were on site to have a fluid experience. And to do that, we implemented a queuing mechanism. So that we had an and with the queuing mechanism, what we could do is adjust our traffic to a way where we saw that the experience was absolutely fluid, and while we were keeping on optimizing the applications, because we not only had issues in terms of sizing, but also we had, because of the very high traffic, some application side effects, where some of the applications were probably not ultimately developed for that very high load, started to have some side effect in terms of performance, right? So they started to behave not as nicely as they should. So the teams were on the foot, trying to look at why the application was not behaving so well under very high load, and we did some fast releases to optimize them, while at the same time controlling with the queuing mechanism. So we started to at the beginning, so we went from 5,000 to 20,000, 25,000 on-site users. And that was painful for them. The user didn't have a good experience. So we implemented the queuing mechanism and went down to about 12,000, and then we went back up slowly.
I see.
And we played that game for about 2 weeks while we had this constant flow of people.
Yeah. I think we also had to do something similar, because when we started hitting it initially, although some parts of the application could scale, we were hitting bottlenecks on the database. So where we had to do some significant work, to be able to scale that part. So while we were working on that, it took us a few days to do that. We were again throttling traffic, so because otherwise, if we were not throttling traffic, it would have just been down for everyone. So then we started, throttling traffic to make sure, at least for the people who got in, they had a good experience, and it kept a bunch of people out.
Excellent. And I would like to talk about this queuing mechanism more, and I'll talk to you, and I'll come back to that one once again, guys, when I speak about the front end and the management of user experience. But I would like to actually cover on the. I would like to know from Chetan, you as well, on the infrastructure side, because I believe you are not on cloud, right?
So it was an interesting case for us, Amit, because we were on the journey to migrate to Google Cloud, and we were supposed to go live somewhere in the first week of April, and before that COVID hit us, so it hit a roadblock for us. But fortunately, what we had been doing was we had been breaking the application into headless structure, so a lot of the core front end was already migrated to React front ends, which are on Google Cloud. So we could scale the front end, but the challenge for us was the middle tier, which is the Hybris applications, which were still on on-premise servers. And we had to actually very quickly add few additional servers and scale the Hybris application servers. We were able to quickly do so because we had spare servers from pre-prod environments, which we repurposed and added to our cluster, and actually then that helped us to scale. However, even what we saw was at some point in time, database was becoming a problem for us, and we had to do some things which we can talk about when we come to the DB layer. But at least for the infrastructure, definitely, scaling the on-premise servers was something that we did for the application layer.
Interesting. So when you say that you repurpose the servers from the pre-prod environment to prod environment, but still you must have done a bit of stabilization of those nodes after deploying after actually repurposing it into the production environment.
Exactly.
So didn't it take time for you to actually move in? Did you actually run into some challenges over there, especially considering that you hardly had any time to actually get them into the production environment?
So initially what we did was we did repurpose some servers from the production itself, and because we had moved to a headless architecture, we had the majority of the load coming onto the servers that were exposed for managing the APIs. So Hybris was exposing a lot of the APIs. So we had to repurpose servers from other clusters that we had, like a couple of back office servers, a couple of servers that were being dedicated to handle the traffic that comes from bots or Google bots. All those servers were immediately repurposed, and those things were done very quickly because we just had to change the configurations and redeploy the servers, and that was done very instantaneously. But then adding additional servers that it definitely required us 2 to 4 days time to procure the servers, make sure we configure them in the right way, make sure the application is deployed, and tested it out before adding to the server. So there were two sets of things that were done. One, repurpose servers from production itself, and then additional servers being procured and added to the cluster.
Excellent. I think there's a clear pattern coming out of here is that of course auto scaling helped, and then second thing is our ability to quickly repurpose the servers nodes to production nodes, customer facing node was very helpful over here. I'm gonna move from here to front end. So you guys spoke about the queuing mechanism. You also spoke about having the headless architecture. Marc, you also spoke about having headless architecture. So let's talk about certain best practices on the front end side that you believe helped you to scale to this new load. Marc, apart from queuing, was there any other best practice that you can actually share about?
So we had a caching layer on the platform using a varnish, and we had to be fair, a fairly basic model of implementation based on TTL on the navigation pages. So all PLP, PDP search pages are traditionally cached for improving performance versus origin page generation. So we took the decision to quickly increase the TTL to broaden the use of caching. As there was a double effect, because there's more traffic, there's more chance of hitting cache, and then if you broaden the cache duration, obviously the cache ratio increasing. So that way we increase cache ratio. We also our origin server, our HP Symfony servers, so we increase the number of cache instances, and at the same time we use a queue mechanism to actually ensure that we were tuning the experience. But as I said, because there's so many services at the back, some of them being personalization services, recommendation services, list services, commerce services, account services, we had to monitor all the underlying services at the same time and apply also at service level some performance announcement, rescaling mechanism. So that was the approach, mixing, ensuring that the front was stable and able to take the load, and caching was obviously a good trick. But as soon as you are starting to use personal use cases and APIs, that doesn't work anymore because there's no caching. So that's where the queuing mechanism was used. So we could also control the fluidity of the experience end to end.
Excellent. So, Chetan, you spoke about headless architecture. So tell us a little more about this. And of course, Marc used Varnish to actually cache the pages. So was there any page caching strategy adopted on your side as well?
Sure, Amit. So I think we had two levels of caches in the front end. One was we had a CDN, Fastly CDN, that was caching all our content pages, product listing, and PDP pages based on the store using. And also there was another layer. So the way our architecture was, we had React micro frontends, which were calling Go services, and those Go services were then calling the Hybris APIs. So between React and Go, we had additional Redis cache, which was caching the Hybris responses as well, which can be cached, like store information, product information, all at that layer as well, which made us helped definitely in scaling whenever the load increased, because one, Fastly was caching all the pages for a certain period of time, and then the Redis cache at the Go layer helped in responding quickly to the customers as well. So that these two things, and of course third, we definitely had the Hybris cache at the Hybris layer, which cached all the Hybris objects. So that these three things helped us in keeping a consistent customer experience for our customers.
I see. That's interesting. Going to Rishi, was there any specific pattern on your front end that you believe helped you in scaling the sites?
So see, on the front end again, we're using React. So we're completely headless using React and all. Unfortunately, see, on the caching side, the problem is at least for this client is that you have. So in terms of caching, we had a CDN, we had Akamai sitting in front. So the static pages we could cache, whatever standard assets and all that. But in terms of caching, product and all that kind of information, it became a challenge because we have price inventory specific to stores, and there are about 2,500 stores. So the kind of cache hit ratios that you get are not very, 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 very significant in terms of, you don't really get much out of that. So we explored that as an option, but that wasn't working out too well. We were looking at, actually we were also looking at, see, what Akamai gives you is, it gives you something called a waiting room, where it's able to, based on a code, have people wait and then queue them on the Akamai side of things. So we had implemented some of that initially, while we were trying to scale the application. So what I was doing was I was throttling the application on GCP, saying that this is the maximum request per second that I can get. Anything more than that would give a 5xx code. So when a 5xx code would go back to Akamai would, take that user and, put them in a waiting room and then start queuing them from there. So as and when, we would start, releasing stuff, they would again send. So we implemented something like this using Akamai, for some time, till the time we were, scaling parts of the application, basically the database which became a bottleneck. Yeah. But again, like I said, just to answer, on the front end side, standard stuff, we couldn't do a lot of caching in there, yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.